Welcome back to the channel, folks, and to my report on Operation Saltire 2, the Scottish Flames of War Nationals for 2025. Now, you've probably noticed this is my first video in a very long time because I took a 3-month break to go visiting family over in Thailand. That's something that we do typically every 2 years. So let's take a whistle-stop tour before we go any further, just to let you see what I was seeing in Thailand.
ถ่ายรูปให้ไหมคะ
วัดอะไร
ดอยสุเทพ
เนาะ
วัดพระธาตุ
ดอยสุเทพ
นี่เนี่ยน่าเห็นใจนะ
But now back to the important stuff, the Scottish Nationals. Well, this year was our second year. That's the second time we've run a 2-day Nationals. Last year we had 18 players. Most of them were from Scotland. This year we had 30 players signed up, though 2 dropped out a couple of days before the event. So it was a big leap for us. So it was a bit scary as an organiser when you've got such a large event, but as you'll see, everything went very well. Now, we had players coming in from all over the UK and the Nordic countries, let's say Nordic countries, Iceland, Denmark and so on. So it was really great to see these people. A lot of them I knew online, chatted to them before about the game, about painting and such likes, and it was great to actually meet them face to face, as well as some followers off the channel. It was great to see you guys too, and finally meet, because we've talked in comments, so it was a great opportunity, and even in one case to have a game against one of the channel followers. So in this video I'm going to talk about the event, talk about the painting, talk about some of the characters who were there, and go through my games as well. Now, it's important at this point to say thank you to Battlefront for providing the official status, giving us the objective marker for 2025, and for our other sponsors, Frontline Terrain and Overlord Game Store. Now, you will find links in the description below to Overlord Games and to Frontline Terrain. Check them out. We have got them as sponsors, but we also know them very well through interactions, buying things from them and so on. So we're confident to be able to promote their services and their products. So I'm going to start with the painting competition because it's the thing that's closest to my heart. It's the thing I was going to be judging this year as well, so I knew it was potentially going to be very difficult because I knew the calibre of painters as well as players that were going to be coming to the event. So let's have a look at the painting side of Operation Solid Tire 2. Let's start the painting section by having a look at a couple of objective markers that I donated as prizes. The first one here, The Last Panther, was a prize that all players could win. You just had to be at the event and then your name went into a hat and you had a chance to walk away with this quite unique objective marker. It depicts almost like a Frankenstein panther that's been cobbled together out of parts at a factory, and the surviving crew members mourning the loss of their comrades as they leave the war behind. The second objective is the 82nd Airborne at La Fière Causeway, and you could only qualify to get into the draw for this if in the last round of the competition, instead of selecting a stance, you rolled a dice. So you're going to play a stance at random, hence only the brave. We didn't recommend it for anybody who was competing for a place, and there was a lot of people who could have won in that last round, but in the end 6 players rolled the dice to see if they could win this lovely little objective. But more importantly, let's get on to the painting competition, which I was going to be the judge for, with players' choice being taken into consideration for any ties. Now, we had 6 finalists in the end. The standard was really good. I used a scoring system which worked out the quality of the painting based on essential painting techniques such as choice and application of colours, volumes, that's highlighting and shading, detail, basing for guns, and then weathering and stowage for vehicles, so we could compare apples and oranges, so to speak. And you will find a link below in the description to the Facebook folder with all of the armies shown. Hawkeye's Finn infantry and German armour scored very highly on basing, on detailing, and for the armour on the stowage and on the weathering. Overall a very beautiful army. Check out the link in the description below that will take you to Hawkeye's Instagram page, where you will see lots and lots of his completed work and stay up to date with some interesting projects. Peter's beautiful Hungarian army scored very highly on basing, on detailing, and then also on volumes. The shading and the highlighting right across the board, including on camo and such likes, was definitely a standout. And in the end it took the players' votes to separate Peter from Hawkeye. Peter is a regular on the channel, so stay tuned to our battle reports to see more of his lovely painting. Soren's beautiful Gebirgsjäger and Romanian force scored highly across all of the categories, and he was also the player who got the most player votes, so I think it kind of stood out amongst the players as well as myself as a judge as being the best army on the day. So well done to everybody for presenting so many beautifully painted armies. Such amount of work has gone into all of them. It's a great showcase for the game. Well done to the finalists too, and in particular well done to Soren for this wonderful bit of work.
Hello, Frank.
It's really good seeing you at the event. I see you like online with your videos, and I like your videos because it introduces a different aspect of the game and how other people play the game. And I thought, all right, I never thought of that, or I would never have approached the game in that way. So I'm enjoying watching your content on Burning Bridges. So I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it to everyone else to subscribe and encourage you guys to do some more videos.
Well, we'll have some new video coming up shortly.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And as far as today goes, how is your event going?
Well, it's been great. So far we've played 2 games, and I got to play 2 players I haven't played before. So I played Alex from Scotland, I played Andy from the UK. So that's been good. I've been fortunate enough to win both of my games, but I had some really good games, enjoyable opponents. So that's the most important part, right? It doesn't really matter if you get points or not, as long as I play with nice people.
It's still nice though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get a couple of wins, because I've not been doing very well. I've been getting my arse kicked by Italians all morning. I'm sure there's something wrong there. That wasn't supposed to happen.
But one of the fun things is here in Scotland we can bring both a blue and a red list, which is fun. So we took the opportunity to do so. I'm traveling with Richard and Morten, and we decided that the secondary list, so our blue list, somebody else made it. So Richard made my blue list. So I got the chance to play both. So I've been playing with the US Lees like everybody else. And then I got a chance to play with my German defensive list with the aviation pack. So it's been fun and a challenge.
That's quite an interesting way of doing it. Get your travelling companion to choose your secondary list.
Yeah.
Hey Rob. Everybody must know Rob from Ballygaming. You probably just know what his finger looks like during the game, but this is Rob. And how are you getting on, Rob?
10 points now.
Not bad.
Won one, lost one, and all my units I lost were in the first game. So not too bad.
So you might be playing Soren then at some point.
Maybe. I'm happy to play anyone, as you know, Frank. But pretty good so far. Enjoying it. I think it was a bit rough for my opponent last game. I did feel for him. He got infantry in the open to cover an objective, and the smoke did not come down.
Right.
And in front of his infantry were 6 Shermans, 4 Lees, and 5 half tracks. And he was also under 2 templates.
Sounds grim.
Not fun. But it's still
Up for round 3 next, and then a well-earned rest.
well-earned rest. Hopefully keeps.
I'm going to take a moment to talk about one of the player tables at the event. Now, we asked players to provide tables just to help meet that quite demanding 14 table limit that was required for the 28 players. Frontline Terrain sponsored a prize, which was some lovely El Alamein scenery for the player who was voted by the other players as having the best player table. And I want to take a look at one table here, which was made by Ray, who plays at the Games Hub in Edinburgh. And I think you'll agree his Stalingrad table is the kind of table that we all dream about being able to play on. And I should say that this is an optional table for the players. We were not forcing tank formations to fight across the Stalingrad table. It was there for players who had infantry formations in that kind of matchup and wanted to test them in this lovely battlefield. So I took a moment to have a chat with Ray, ask him about how he put all this together, and maybe give you some ideas of how you could do it yourself. Right folks, here's Ray's Stalingrad table now. Ray, I believe you've got a lot more than just what's here.
Yes, this is a 6x4 board, and I've actually got the same amount again, so I can do 12x4.
And you do those games at the Games Hub in Edinburgh, yeah?
We've used them once for City Fight, and we were using 3x4 boards with, I think it was 68 points aside, and everyone had a really fun time playing. It was good fun.
And what is it made from in the main?
The buildings are high density expanded foam, normally used for insulation. It's really easy to work with, it cuts easy, and it takes an imprint off a texture roller really well.
Yeah.
The only problem with it is if you knock it hard, it will break. So after I built it, I added wooden, I used lollipop sticks just to support any high points and main walls.
And then you've just got various odds and ends and so on.
Yeah, just tin cans, just bits of stuff that you'd normally throw out.
So basically this is something that if you've got the right mindset, anybody could have a go at this then, yeah?
Oh, I would definitely say so. When I was building it, for each board I would have an idea of the layout and what buildings I wanted on it and how they would look. So I'd draw a floor plan first with the roads, and then I would work out where the buildings would go. And like I say, I'd have an idea of what I wanted the buildings to look like, and just took it from there.
This is a good mixture of stuff. You've got industrial,
Yes.
sort of residential, then you've got open areas,
Yeah.
large, very large building over there. So it's not just the same theme repeated
No.
across. It's a good mixture,
And-
even a few wrecked vehicles
Yeah.
dotted around.
And the boards are all modular as well. Every board has a half-width road around it, so you could put them together in any order you wanted.
Well, I think you've done really well. And it's
Thank you.
When I first saw this, I actually thought this was made up of an old range of resin buildings by
Okay.
JR Miniatures. I thought, oh, where did they get them from? But then you told me that you made it yourself. I was like, well, that's really well done. So thanks for telling us how you did it. And if anyone else fancies doing this, you can see it is possible to do it with
Yeah.
a wee bit of planning and the right materials.
That's right, yes. It does take a while. It took me 3 months to do the full 12 by 4. It took me 3 months, but I was putting in 6 days a week, sort of 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
It was a labour of love.
Yeah.
So I just thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, it's cracking. I hope to see somebody having the balls to play in it today.
That would be
or,
nice.
Or tomorrow.
I think someone with a big infantry army rather than armour.
There's quite a few infantry armies out there, so let's hope the draw throws up the opportunity. But cheers, Ray, you've done really well.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
A cracking setup.
Thank you very
And
much.
I think an inspiration to other people who want to do Stalingrad gaming.
Okay, thank you.
Right folks, I think it's time to get down to the nitty gritty, see how the dice rolled and how my games went. So here is the force I'm using, made of 2 formations, both of them being the same, just slightly different in makeup, and that's going to be Hero T-34s. Now I've gone for T-34s because my only other options in mid-war is really going to be Germans or British. I never have any joy with my British, they just roll terribly. I don't know what it is. They've got decent tanks, Grant's a decent tank, but they just roll terribly. And Germans, I don't know, I think they're actually a half decent option after mid-war points. But I'm not feeling it. I am, however, feeling T-34s because they've got good front armour, anti-tank 9, firepower 3, good tactical move, but they do have some problems, including slow firing for the T-34 76s. But that in itself is okay, especially if you take the Hero ones. They're not hitting 2s, they're hitting 3s. They have a trained skill level and they have a 3-up last stand. Otherwise they're confident, so that's not bad. Now each formation has got a HQ, and this one is 3 platoons of 3. This one is 2 platoons of 3. Now the 3 tank platoons can be a problem, but the 3-up last stand helps them. And then to support them, they've each got a 7-stand Hero SMG platoon. Now these guys have a 3-up save, not a 4-up. They are confident as long as the commissar can stay alive, otherwise they're reluctant. And then they've got SMGs and a hit and a 3 in assault. And then this side over here, they've also got a little mortar platoon. Now, these guys are green, which means that they're going to be suffering from that mid-war Russian problem of ranging in around terrain. But I've got 2 formations and each one has got 4 platoons. So they're hopefully not going to break in a hurry. Now, what's it good for, what's it bad for? Well, first of all, it works best when it can mass. When it gets all together, you can imagine it puts out a hell of a lot of decent anti-tank, and its front armour 6 can take a decent amount of damage. When it starts to struggle, it's typically because it is got reserves, and the reserves might not all come in together. They might take a while to come in, and then you've maybe just got a platoon of tanks here, a platoon of tanks there, and then they'll start to struggle because, you know, any tank would really, and they can't get that critical mass. When I've been using it in practice games, I have really just been playing against Axis, and typically Germans, Romanians and Hungarians. That's what I've been up against. So I've not tried it against other lists that I may meet at a tournament. And in practice games, it always does really well. But those are just practice games. When you're in the crucible of a tournament up against players you've never played before and lists you've never played against, well, that's where your real practice starts. My first game was a great matchup. I was going to be playing Morton. Now Morton is someone I've interacted with and followed online, so it was great to have the opportunity to meet him and play him in person. Now Morton works along with various other people in the community. He's very active in the tournament and event scene, and he works with Soren on the Burning Bridges channel on YouTube, and they do videos where they interview other players with a lot of experience and a lot to offer the hobby, and have chats about issues. So if you've not already done so, check them out, give them a sub. You can maybe learn a lot about events, about tournaments, and about list building. Back to the game, and Morton is using Italian infantry backed up by Italian armour and Semiventes, and he chose defend, I chose attack, and we ended up with hold the pocket. It's a fairly straightforward mission in terms of special rules. The difference is perhaps the deployment zones. You've got the attacker on the narrow bands on each side, and the defender in a very compact zone of deployment with the objectives close together. Now that presents opportunities for both sides. The attacker can, hit the defender in the flank, but the defender is very compact, which means that they can move troops around easily to support each other, but it also can make popping ambushes quite difficult because there might not be suitable terrain available in the small area, which could itself also be closed down very quickly by the advancing troops. So challenges and opportunities for both players. Morton chose the area you can see him standing against for his deployment, a nice compact set of terrain, and definitely the best choice. And he is putting his heavy machine guns in ambush rather than his anti-tank guns, because he's not sure if he's going to get to deploy the anti-tank guns successfully from ambush. His one concern at this point is that tree line you can see in the middle of the picture. That blocks line of sight when you combine it with the houses to anything coming in from the front. Otherwise, he's as confident as it could be. Now to my deployment, I'm going to start with my infantry. Their intention is to move into that wood and get themselves into the church and maybe dug in there and threaten the flank of the Italian deployment zone from there. You can see the mortars in the bottom of the screen too. Then I've got one formation of tanks which is going to swing to the front so that it can approach without fear of getting clobbered by anti-tank guns. There is an 88 hiding behind a house looking straight down the road, you can see in the top of the picture. And there's my other formation, which is going to use a wooded road to approach directly the most forward objective and hopefully keep that pinned and within contesting distance, that 8-inch critical distance. So the game kicked off with dashing really from me. One platoon, as I said, going in using the wood as cover on the flank, and the other platoon swinging round to the front to sit directly facing the deployment zone. But the infantry, they failed follow me's, so I'm not going to get as quick progress on that flank as I hoped and probably as I need. And in Morton's turn one, well, they got his reserve straight away. Semiventes heading straight for my poor infantry, and elsewhere he was just moving his own infantry around. As he says, he likes to actively defend with infantry, not just sit there, so he's moving out into buildings, setting up a wider defensive screen to force my tanks to move through narrow approach routes. And when it came to shooting, well, unfortunately my infantry failed 5 out of 8 3-up saves, and that rolling of 1s and 2s was going to become a common theme for the rest of the day. But those infantry are pretty much done now. So I'm continuing with the plan. My infantry, the surviving infantry, are moving off towards the church. They fail to follow me to get into that valuable bulletproof cover. Elsewhere my tanks are just lining up to start putting some fire down into the defending infantry and the defending 88. Then Morton's going to come out to deal with those infantry near the church. He's moving his armoured cars to machine gun them and then bringing up infantry to assault them and hopefully remove that threat entirely from his flank. He's also maybe thinking about assaults against the T-34s that are in the woods, because it's always very vulnerable being a tank in the woods, and some smoke to reduce the impact of shots onto the 88 to try and keep that alive. And it goes badly for my infantry. They get smashed to bits and the assault goes in, drives them off, and my infantry are effectively out of the game. However, those armoured cars that came up to facilitate that assault, they end up getting destroyed. They get wiped out. And then we're going to talk about some crazy assaulting. My first assault into the craters didn't go very well. I needed 2 to pass my cross check, only 1 got in. I was using the smoke at this point that was there as cover, but the 88, which was pinned, still managed to get 1 hit. So that ended the assault really before it even began. If I'd been able to get in there, potentially pushing them back, I would have taken that 88 out to help clear the way. Now I have to point out that Morton was not having everything his way for dice too. That 88 fired, let me think now, 8 dice during the game, needing 3s and 4s, and missed every single one in direct fire. Morton was also trying to assault. He was trying to force my T-34s on my left to break off, but the dice went with him there, and I was able to push him further back, allowing me the opportunity to prepare another assault. And you can see some Italian armour which was coming on from reserve and moving over from killing the infantry. They were going to become vulnerable to side shots. Now the Italian armour was starting to take a beating at this point as I was getting more tanks moving out around the flanks of them on both sides. There was a couple sitting bailed out, ready for my next potential assault too, so I'm thinking to myself, if I can get in, I can maybe do some real damage there. And that 88 though is refusing to die. It keeps making its saves, and when it failed, Morton burned a lucky card just to keep it on the table. But just as we've got a dodgy 88 set of dice, my assaulting dice were pretty bad. When I put that critical assault in, it could capture, build at Semiventes, get right into the flank. I took 2 hits from defensive fire, 1 from a flamethrower. The only thing that could have impacted me was a 1, so I rolled a 1. Bailed out tank, Pack 40 bailed out the other one, maybe even killed it actually, but that ended the assault before it even got in. And Morton counter-attacked with just a couple of bases infantry. The rest were pinned, but that was enough, because even with my HQ there, I managed to fail my counter-attack rolls, and I lost 2 bailed out T-34s. And that pretty much was where we got to, folks. I couldn't get in, Morton couldn't drive me off. So time was running very, very short anyway, so a draw was the result. Right folks, so we have agreed not to play any more turns. There's not much time left. We've both bemoaned our luck, different kind of bad luck, but I don't know if the different luck would have changed the outcome. Morton, anyway, Morton, we shook the hand. Thanks for the game. Thanks. What did you make of that?
Of the game?
Yeah.
That I need new dice for my active shooting. I didn't hit a single shot with my 88.
Yeah.
And Frank, you need some better dice on the assaults.
Yeah, that's why I tend not to play for assaults, because I tend not to do well. But you've got to use assaults when you're up against infantry. You've got to kick them out. But I think both of us can bemoan our dice, but at the end of the day, I don't think either of us necessarily would have had a different outcome if the dice had worked in each other's favour. Maybe a draw was
a game of dice.
Yeah, and maybe it was a fairly even match-up at the end of the day. Like you can see that there's not many Italian tanks left, but there's a hell of a lot of Italian infantry left and Italian guns. So I think it showed up the strengths and weaknesses of my list, you know, coming up against that.
Yeah.
Anyway, good luck with the rest of the tournament, Morton.
You too, Frank.
And I'll check in with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Cheers. Game 2 is against Lawrence, one of the local players that I've played 100 times before, and it's more Italians. I'm not expecting to play a lot of Italians, but 2 games already. Now, I'm not worried about his list at all, because it's Italian armour, which I've shot to bits all day long in so many different games. He's not got any infantry, but he does have 2 batteries of 288s. They're the main consideration that is going to determine my manoeuvring and such likes. The mission was Dust Up. We both chose attack. Dust Up's a nice, simple, straightforward mission in terms of deployment zones. The challenges with it, with the delayed reserves, is do you go early or do you wait? Do you build up your strength, or do you try and take an objective early? It's quite often the case that the player who sticks their neck out first gets it chopped off, because they move out and then the reserves come in along with what's on the table and beat them up. So it can be a bit of a gamble. Now, this mission does have reserves, which can be a bit of a challenge for my army,
because it really needs to be able to concentrate its force. So I had a mixture of infantry and tanks in reserve because I had one infantry platoon on the table to try and cover my objectives. You need to attack and defend in this mission. So I've deployed, starting you can see behind the hill there in my deployment zone. I'm very worried about the amount of anti-tank 3 and firepower 3 artillery that Lawrence has got, so I'm keeping myself back from the objective, including my infantry, which I might regret, but if I sat them on it, the chances are they would get clobbered. And you can see 88s there covering Lawrence's deployment zone with artillery at the back and then Semiventis to help hold that front and potentially advance on from there. Lawrence went first, but there wasn't much happening because no line of sight, no bombardments and such lights causing meeting engagement. This game can be a little bit of a slow burner. Personally myself, I didn't do anything either. I couldn't get my tanks across the front of those 88s, so I didn't try it. They got a very good dash, but it wasn't quite enough. In the end, I did a blitz on one of my turns and was able to swing that platoon you can see there right around to the flank. I hope to join them to reserves, which would include some infantry, to attack through that wood and hit that objective, which was quite exposed. Now, Lawrence started to get his reserves on, but they're all hiding from my tanks. But the objective down there is wide open because my infantry got pinned and stayed pinned, and their commissar managed to die with the very first round of shooting, so they're now reluctant. But over on my right, I parked myself on the objective, too far back for the 88s to fire through the wood, get a reserve platoon of tanks on as well. So Lawrence has to swing around, otherwise he's lost the game, has to get within 4 inches of that objective, and then he goes, well, two can play that game, and I'm going, oh right, all those tanks are coming in, my infantry are pinned, they stayed pinned the entire game, my tanks are going to have to close in to protect that objective. I can't just sit and shoot them or I will lose the game. Dust up, that's kind of what it can be like. So I'm pretty confident at this point that I'm going to shoot these Italian tanks to bits. I'm stationary, so I've not got the slow firing penalty. They've got like 3 and 4 points of armour on the front. I'll smash them to bits. You know, they're careful, so they'll hit me more than I'll hit them, but the best anti-tank they've got is 8. My front armour is 6. I'm going to be safe, right? And then we turned on the bleeping machine that you see on the TV, bleep, 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 for swearing, because I proceeded to just roll ones for every single save, just about. The 5 Semiventis that took on 8 T-34s here, the Semiventis won. They only lost 1 tank, the T-34s got wiped out. And on the other side, I just couldn't get enough hits. And when I did get hits, most of them saved. My infantry came up to help, but they got 1 assault in that nearly won the game, but there was 1 tank still contesting, so I wasn't able to drive them off. And on the other side, well, I got absolutely wiped out by Semiventis, and therefore Lawrence was able to take that objective, whilst this other one on the right side managed to just hang on. So that's a total sort of classic dust up, but not perhaps in the way you would expect. You'd think the T-34s would destroy the Semiventis. As it was, luck wasn't in, and Lawrence was looking at me out of the side of his eyes with the language that was coming out of my mouth, so apologies for that, Lawrence. So that was an 8-1 win for Lawrence. That's how little damage I did to his Italian armour with my anti-tank 9. So I had a 1 point from that and 3 points from the first game, so not a strong start. So game 3 was against Gunnar, who is a follower of the channel, so it's always great to meet people who you interact with online, and he was really pleased to get a game against me, especially when he saw my list. Gunnar was using Shermans, M10s and infantry against me, so he was confident with his stabilisers and my aggressive status he would get lots of hits. The M10s with an anti-tank 12, the Shermans with an anti-tank 10 and 6 points of armour on the front would stand up very well against my T-34s. Now, I'm not used to playing T-34s against allies, so I wasn't in the right mindset. I was just thinking about these as like Panzer IVs, which I would normally beat up. So I was quite confident at the start of the game that I would be doing as much damage to Gunnar as he would be doing to me. We both chose attack as the Stanson ended up with probe, and I was nominally the attacker in this game. Though you can see from the mission, it's a tricky one. You are a defender, but you're also an attacker. You have to go and take an objective. You can't just sit and defend and hold on. So it's a bit of a weird one. It's got challenges for both because of the scattered reserves. I don't like scattered reserves for my list because I need to be able to concentrate my T-34s if I'm going in a sort of toe-to-toe fight against tanks. They can move fast if they come in the wrong place. But as you'll see, it's not just about concentrating to be strong in one place. If that one place is your own deployment zone, you need to attack and take an objective in this mission. So compromises are always required, dependent on where and when reserves arrive. Now for deployment, I kept all of my infantry off the table. There was 3 mortar units in Gunnar's list, and they would just smash me to bits, and I just spread my tanks out across the width of the table and hoped my reserves would come in the right place. And then I wanted to force Gunnar to spring his ambush, which he did, and he killed one of my T-34s. And then my reserves started to arrive, and I rolled a 1 for the first platoon. I then started to keep rolling 1s for my reserves, and they kept going over on the other corner, whilst Gunnar was also rolling 1s, and they were coming in the opposite corner. You can see more reserves arriving. There's a lot of tanks in that corner now. But on the other side, M10s were coming in, Shermans were coming in, and my poor surviving T-34s there were starting to get very bullied and thought they were going to have to pull back. But I've got to be aggressive, so I shoot off on the other flank. I'm going to kill some mortars and then hopefully sweep around the flank to smash up the infantry defending there. But there's more pressure coming down, and I'm starting to fail lots of saves, and I'm not getting any leverage back on the advancing Shermans and M10s. Some infantry arrive, they're going to run over to try and cover an objective, but I'm starting to feel the pressure there, and as a result I'm going to end up, after killing some mortars on the left, I'm going to end up having to swing across to try and hit these Shermans in the flank, because I just can't roll above a 3 for my saves on my T-34s, meaning they're all getting destroyed. And also my firepowers, when I am penetrating the armour, like on the M10s and on some of the Shermans, they're all coming up as 1s and 2s as well. So once again, I'm not getting any leverage, and the opportunities for kills are few and far between because of the good armour on the front of the Sherman. So it's going to end up with me struggling to get over, taking lots of casualties, and the critical formations that were holding on to objectives getting broken, and Gunnar getting a fairly straightforward and easy 8-1 win. But it was a pleasure playing Gunnar, even though I probably did do a lot of cursing in front of him. Sorry again, Gunnar, for all the 1s and 2s I seem to be rolling all day long. So I'm on 5 points. So I'm going into day 2 wondering how much worse it can get from a dice rolling. You know, there's a lot of these games from the previous day where I wouldn't necessarily have won the game anyway. You know, the nature of the game and the mission and the list that we're up against, but you feel as though you never really stood a chance if the dice are not with you. But at the end of the day, I think only one game that I should have won, if the dice were with me, is probably the game against Lawrence. And that's no reflection on Lawrence, that's just a reflection on the fact that I should easily beat up Italian tanks. The other games, well, they probably would have been draws unless my opponent was really unlucky. So, will my luck be better on day 2? Now, game 4, I'm glad to say, was against Shirley King. I've played her husband Rex before, and we've had some good socials after events up and down the country as well. So I was really pleased to be able to get a game against Shirley. Now Shirley was using Soviets. It was an Su-76 formation. 4 platoons of 5 Su-76s. So that's anti-tank 9, front armour 4, but also artillery. So my infantry were definitely not going to start on the table. She also had a platoon of Valentines, some of them with anti-tank 9 with 6-pounders, but good all-round armour on them, and some Sturmovic's. We both chose attack as a stance and rolled Scouts Out. Now Scouts Out is a mission which is fairly straightforward in terms of deployment. It's important to note that on one of the objectives you're not starting, you have to move onto it. Otherwise it's one of these attack missions where you have to hold on to an objective and go take an objective, you know. So you can't be defensive or you're going to lose the game. You'll run out of time, you know. You can't just sit back, shoot and then hope to move forward. You have to attack and defend as much as possible at the same time. And for me, my attack, I thought and planned it to be would be the infantry. There's Shirley's deployment with Su-76s taking a dominant position on the hill, other ones ready to move around to the buildings, and the Valentines holding the centre, so to speak. And the HQ is going to head off towards an objective farther out on the right. Then I'm being a bit more cautious. I've got 3 platoons on. I'm thinking if Shirley moves forward, I'm going to ambush her by coming up round a hill, round terrain, out of the woods, and that's what happened. And then Shirley ended up over the next couple of turns with the curse of 1s and 2s and managed to get an absolute hiding on her Valentines. Now, to begin with, the Sturmovix were coming in every turn. They weren't doing a lot though. I was trying to stay on terrain as much as possible and I was making my saves, so in the end I only lost 1 T-34 to the Sturmovix before they ended up just not wanting to turn up as the game wore on. With the loss of the Valentines, Shirley was pretty much convinced that was it and she wasn't going to get a win, but it was still very much up in the air whether or not I was going to get a win. She still had lots and lots of Su-76s, lots of anti-tank 9 that could damage my T-34s. And in the end, 3 platoons of T-34s were destroyed, mainly by direct fire from the Su-76s. But you can see my infantry are charging up the centre of the table there. Some artillery fire came into them, did a bit of damage, but it didn't stop them. And I just kept pushing them on and on whilst the tank fight was taking place, heading towards the objective you can see top right there. And that's how it played out over the next few turns. We were both losing tanks. More Su-76s were getting killed than T-34s, which is maybe not surprising. And my infantry were not stopped, not pinned down, which was a relief to see compared to other games. Just kept pushing on up, got to that objective. Shirley then had to move Su-76s to protect the objective, you know, keep it contested. They took casualties, infantry were ready to drive off the survivors, so it ended up as a 6-3 win for myself. I was really glad to get the opportunity to play against Shirley, so thanks for the game, Shirley, and I'll see you again soon. And as far as the tournament goes, well, I was glad to get the win, and so I wasn't heading for a complete whitewash. Now the 5th and final game, round 5, is against Leo. Leo's not a very experienced player. Now in round 5 I've got the Only the Brave prize, where if you roll a dice for your stance, so you're choosing at random, your name will go into the draw for the La Fière objective. So Leo decided to do that, and as he was doing it I decided I would do it myself, and he rolled manoeuvre, I rolled defend, which doesn't sound very good for a tank formation, but the mission that came out of it was Valley of Death. Now this mission has got challenges for both the attacker and the defender. The defender doesn't have minefields, they don't have an ambush. They're not sitting on the objective right at the start. But the attacker has got a long way to go to get to those objectives, and they've got reserves. If those reserves don't come on quick, then, you know, by turn 6 they might not influence the game at all. So it's difficult for both players. Now Leo, just to make sure that I'm getting a bit of variety in the tournament, has got Italians. So that's my 3rd game against Italians. He's got Semoventes, the light tanks, can't quite remember what the hell they call them folks, M14s or something, and an armoured car formation. He's got some artillery. He's also got some biplanes as well. So there is a mixture of things, but not a lot of it is of a real threat to my armour, or shouldn't be. Oh, and also he has got a very small platoon of infantry as well, just in case, as he put it, they need to sit on an objective. But in this game they're going to have to advance. So I deployed down this end of the table. You notice I'm playing on my home table here for the last game. I'm going to be moving in with my infantry in towards the objectives, and then Leo is got a little box at the end which he's advancing out of by dashing, and as he's dashing up there he begins to understand how ineffective his anti-tank is likely to be, and he starts to pause and hold back, and started to move his tanks into concealment. He's got some infantry moving up through the train station too, but they're holding on just now. And he's bringing in artillery, bringing in planes where he can, try to pick away at me, but not getting any great leverage. And you can see I'm just trying to hide there. Now I've got my infantry on or about objectives now, so I'm quite happy. They're starting to take casualties from artillery, but they're in the right place. Reserves are starting to trickle on for Leo, but you know, it's really in the main it's just armoured cars. So he's hanging back a bit, and then I remind him that turn 6 he has to be within 8 inches of the objective or he's going to lose. So he has to start rushing forward and just really stick his neck out. And there's no much option really. Oh, and by the way, he's got a couple of 88s. I forgot to mention that. I'm using the terrain to hide from them, keeping out of line of sight. He sees planes coming in there to try and knock out some tanks, but they're not really getting any effective hits. So he starts pushing across towards the church and the buildings, but I've pretty much got the way through there blocked with infantry. He can't drive my infantry out of those buildings, so he just keeps pushing forward. On another flank too, you see the infantry coming out, armoured cars, some light tanks moving over to sit on the objective. He knows he just has to try and hold out and try and get a time out for a draw, because he's got no confidence at all about pushing me away. Though he did wipe out an infantry platoon. As you can see, it just conveniently failed all its saves, and like that, you can see the few survivors down here, they're not going to last much longer. Now by this point I think I've not actually destroyed anything at all in Leo's army. I just can't hit him, not because I'm moving around and suffering penalties, I just can't hit him. My dice were pretty much terrible once again. So I'm thinking to myself, I am going to end up with a draw here because I'm not killing anything. I need assaults, I need to drive them off. And what happened in the end was, over on the right beside the church, I did manage to destroy everything. Took forever. You can see there's just one tank left there now. I then lifted up my infantry, because the rest were on this objective were gone, and moved over so that they could launch assaults and help push things back. And with the combination of anti-tank fire actually getting some casualties in, and the infantry moving over into that area, I managed to push him back just in time with about 15 minutes. So I managed to get, in this game, let me think now, it was a 7-2 win. But it was a nice relaxed game for the final game of the event. Both myself and Leo didn't necessarily have any expectations, so to speak, so we both just got stuck in and enjoyed it. So after all those games, 5 rounds of battling away, here are the final scores. As you can see, it's very tight at the top, which is what you're going to expect, to be honest, when there's so many players in a tournament. Like 28 players is going to have a lot of players fighting in the last round, but in this case it was a lot of players fighting in the last round for first, second or third, so it went right down to the wire in many games. Personally, I finished on 18 points with 2 wins, quite far down the rankings compared to last year. Last year I had 2 wins, but my defeats were better, so I got more points from that, and there was less players at it as well. So from getting 2 wins at a tournament, you're unlikely to be pushing towards the top 10 in a larger event as this one was, but I was quite happy with the 2 wins that I got. The other games, maybe if fate was on sort of like an even keel, I should have won it, but the other ones, well, no, I can't expect too much, folks. I think the dice gods would have to be entirely on my side. So 18 points, fair result for what was still a very enjoyable tournament for myself. Let's get round to the final standings now. I'm going to just talk over this because the sound quality on the recording wasn't very good. There was another event on at the same time, and they were kind of in full swing when we were doing our presentation, so I'll just explain what's happening. So first of all, that was Soren getting his first place in the painting competition, and then next up we have got a couple of prize draws. We have got Brian winning the Only the Brave and Tom winning the Last Panther objective marker. Now, best table, sponsored by Frontline Terrain, went to Peter with his snow table. I don't know if you've seen it before, but it's a lovely piece of work. It's got little bits of foam, for instance, on the roofs as snow. Very nicely done. The best sporting was sponsored by Overlord Games, and that went to Hillner. A very well deserved win there. Everybody was very much in agreement with that. The wooden spoon, that went to Kenny. Kenny is one of the organising committee, so he maybe didn't win a prize, a real prize so to speak, but he was certainly a winner for all the effort that he put in to the event itself. And in second place, another great performance from Rex. He's regularly featuring in the top 3 for tournaments these days, so well done Rex on coming in second place. Then first place, sponsored by Overlord Games, went to Hawkeye. That was his first ever tournament win, so he was really pleased that he made the journey, and well done for a great performance with a wonderful looking army. And that wraps up Operation Saltire 2. We're going to start planning for next year. We've learned a lot from the planning process for this year. It's amazing how little admin details can have a big impact on how things play out in the end. Thanks once again to everybody who made the effort, especially those people who travelled from so far away, all the Nordic players. I'm glad to see they took home, a lot of them took home prizes, which is brilliant. Well deserved for the effort that they're making. And also thanks to Nightly Gaming for hosting the event, to Battlefront once again for giving us the official status and the plaques, the objectives, Overlord Game Store, and to Frontline Terrain. Check out the links in the description below, and you'll also see there of course more links to other photo albums and such likes. Personally, I'm taking a little break. I flew in from 3 months in Thailand on the Friday morning, that's the Friday before the event, and then went to Bathgate to set up for the next day. Setting up lots of tables, had a practice game against Rob from Valley Gaming, and then went home and watched the football as you do, because there's an important game on for Livingston FC. So I was awake for 47 hours, and then I went to play the event itself the next morning. So that's the way to do it, folks. If you're going to go to a tournament, travel 6,000 miles with no sleep before you play. But anyway, the channel will soon be back to some tutorials. I've already got 2 prepared. I'll be making some more this week, then hopefully some battle reports coming up, and basically keeping the channel going, keeping it full of content for you guys, because I know a lot of yous really miss that side of the hobby if you can't find it on YouTube. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and if you'd like to do so, please hit the subscribe button and the bell button, which means we'll definitely see you all on the next one.